Three, two, one.
Here we go!
Welcome to the North Carolina Youth and Government YAGCAST. We've got a special edition of our media podcast with another alumni spotlight interview. We're doing something new for our youth and government program, and we're interviewing alumni to get a sense of what they did in the program, what they're up to today, and lessons they've learned along the way. My name is Megan Hoyt, but everyone in this program calls me Boz. And today I'm thrilled to be co-interviewing alongside Liza Wells, the current co-editor-in-chief of the North Carolina YAG media team. And we are thrilled to be joined by Emmy Martin. Today, Emmy is a junior pursuing a double major in journalism and media and information science at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Outside of the classroom, she is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Tar Heel. Emmy has a track record of reporting on the most important issues facing her communities. For the DTH, she's covered statewide responses to the Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, the 2022 midterm elections, and healthcare issues during the COVID-19 pandemic. During her time in youth and government, Emmy focused on sharing stories that mattered at conference, ultimately serving as the editor-in-chief of the media team and a big special shout out as the founder of YAGCAST. So we are super excited, Emmy. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy you're here tonight.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back on the YAGCast.
I love it. The tables are reversed a little bit, right?
Interviewed. Weird.
Yes. So we'd love to really just start by asking you about your time in the program. We know that, ultimately you ended up as the media editor in chief, but we'd love to hear a little bit about what your experience was like for starting in youth and government and just how you got to the end of being the editor in chief. So just tell us about your time in the program.
Yeah, totally. So I started at YAG my freshman year. I was in the freshman forum. Feels like a very long time ago thinking back. I think I was a bill author. And I really, really liked writing, but I also liked speaking in front of a group of my peers. But I also really remember seeing the photographers and the reporters who were on the media team running around, interviewing people and like taking photos, taking videos. And I was thinking, that looks really fun. I really like all the freedom that media has. And so
Big pro.
next year, that is a really great thing about being in media. You can really like get your hands in like actual production, and also like it's super fun. I am biased because I love journalism and I love the media, but like that was my first taste of journalism and it was just really great. So my sophomore year, I applied for the media team. I actually really wanted to do photography, but I didn't get it. I was on the print team. So I was like writing the blogs and the stories and talking to people. That was my first taste of journalism ever. And so that's kind of where I fell in love with journalism, which is why YAG is so important to me and why I love it so much, and why I come back as an alumni now to volunteer. So my sophomore year, I was a reporter on the print team. And then my junior year, I became the print editor or the co-print editor. Super fun, got to work with students, got to write, got to edit. And then my final year, when I was a senior, it was remote because of COVID, but I was the co-editor-in-chief with Katie Clark. Shout out Katie. And it was super fun and a really, really good experience leading a team. Honestly, I love YAG. Like I wrote one of my college essays about YAG. And so I think like if you're in the program now, it's a really good experience and you'll love it and you'll remember it forever. And honestly, I still talk to my friends now from YAG and it's like really great to reminisce.
That's super fun. I know the media team gets really tight because of how much time you'll spend together and just the things you're working on too. But I do know that students maybe get intimidated to like apply or do something different than what their friends are doing. Historically, still our legislative program is still the largest. So just talk to me about why I know you were interested in the photographers, you noticed them your first year, but what really made you like branch out and actually decide to opt in to being on the media team?
I kind of just shot my shot and I hoped that I would get in. I would say like if you're interested in just trying something new, apply to be in media. It was the best decision I ever made. And you never know, like you might think you're not qualified, but maybe you are. And so that happened with me and I got to write and report and I fell in love with it. And I still do that now. Like that's what I do at the Daily Tar Heel. I'm sorry if you can hear the newsroom behind me. But I would say like just go for it. It's the best. Like being on media, you get to work really hard on a project. You get to stay up late with your friends. It's a lot of work, but it's also like it's a different experience from the rest of YAG, and it's also a smaller group. So it is special.
Lots of pros, it sounds like.
Definitely.
Emmy, so last year before all the actual students and delegations came, media didn't really have much to do and report on because there was no one there. And so I remember this so vividly. We sat in the conference room and we turned on the TV. We were like, let's watch TV. And the only thing we could find was Who is the Father? And so we literally sat there for like 2 hours and just watched Who is the Father. I've never watched it again. I'd never watched it before, but it was such a funny memory and I'll remember it forever. But do you have any memories like that that are so random but are so funny from YAG?
That's a great question. Let me think. So my senior year was like online, so it was a little bit different. But I remember my junior year, the really fun part about media, but also like kind of the hard part is the late nights. But I remember it was Saturday, so we I believe the gala is on Saturday evening. So we went to that and had a lot of fun with everyone else and danced and ate the dinner and played games. But then all the media team like had to change. And then we went back to the media room and started working, making sure our final stories are good, making sure the final video is like the best it could be. And we were there until probably 3 a.m. and just all of the crazy. We had pizza, all the crazy like delusional conversations we were having, and then waking up the next morning at like 6 or 7 a.m. It's a really great experience. Like that sounds probably horrible to people who aren't in media, but it is some of the best memories I have from high school.
Oh, I love that.
They're just the best.
Yeah, there's just no like way to quantify that. I think just those moments and those experiences with your peers, I think are really special. And I think one of the things that makes the youth and government program so formidable, I'd say for a lot of high school students, is because they actually have opportunities like that to get really tight with people who really care about something. So did you find that the students who opted into media, like to being on that team, are are they cut from the same kind of cloth? Are they all sort of doing journalism things today, like that you know of, in college or otherwise? I mean, do you find that group of people, yeah, like it's sort of a subset almost of youth and government, right? So like, is there like a way that you would describe someone who would be like successful on the media team, or jive really well with that kind of pressure and deadline and delusional 3 a.m. conversation?
I think the beauty of media is that there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can do social media or broadcast or photo, or print. And so like thinking about all the alumni now and where they are, like people are doing a bunch of different things, and that's kind of the beauty of media. Sorry. The beauty of media is really that it brings in a bunch of different people, and you can meet people from a lot of different backgrounds and experiences. And so I would say like people who are interested in media, like you don't have to be someone who wants to be a journalist or like someone who is going to be a photographer, like for Nat Geo. Like you can just be interested in parts of it. And it can be fun. Like it doesn't have to be this really intense thing. That's what I really like about media, is because like YAG is specifically like about politics, and people who maybe are interested in like like the North Carolina legislature or maybe like the Supreme Court. But media is so fun and different, but still within that larger group of people who do care about like their civic duty. That also adds a whole nother layer to it. Like the people who are in media are also people who care and people who vote. And I think that is beautiful and awesome. And I really like it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really special. And it's making me think too about just how you have continued to pursue journalism in both your majors and also obviously your huge, I don't even think I could call it an extracurricular activity, right? In college. I mean, this is a full-time job that I feel like that you have being the editor in chief of the Daily Tar Heel. So tell us a little bit about that experience of being on, like how does it parallel to what you experienced as journalism, your first taste of journalism and youth and government, to like what you're doing today, but also just the reporting that you had done before you were the editor.
Yeah. Um, it's very similar. I will say my my work at the Daily Tar Heel is very much like a job, I would say. I'm probably in the office in the newsroom more than I'm in class. For better or for worse. It's a really great experience, the Daily Tar Heel, and I love it. But my time at YAG and my time in media did give me like a small taste of what journalism is actually like. Writing for the blog gave me a taste of what maybe a lead looks like or how to interview someone. And those are both skills that I use every day now. And I would say um, at the Daily Tar Heel, my job now is really managing people and working with the team. And the skills that I gained as the editor in chief at YAG also were very similar to that. I think leadership is really the same at every level. And so if you're interested in pursuing a leadership career or a leadership role at YAG, be it in media or not, it does prepare you for college or for a job in the future. And so I do definitely draw on the lessons I learned when I was co-editor in chief at YAG now still.
To kind of bounce off of that, what advice would you give for students who aren't just doing and pursuing media, but just all students in general? What advice would you give them if they want to choose to pursue your line of work as the editor of the Daily Tar Heel?
Um, being the face of any organization is tough. I think anyone could say that. You learn a lot. I've learned how to put out a lot of fires. I've learned how to deal with a lot of interpersonal conflict. But also, it's really wonderful getting to kind of see a team grow together and learn and become leaders themselves is a really great experience and it's very fun. So anyone who's interested in maybe just being a leader in general, or if they want to be an editor in chief or an executive editor, either at their college newspaper when they graduate, or maybe like in their career, I would say learning how to talk to people, learning how to remain calm in crisis. Those are really important skills. And I think those are skills you can start learning in high school in YAG. But I would say like really communicating and just being calm is some of the best qualities that I have gained or that I have been able to kind of focus on in this role.
I really like that the skills are so fundamental. That there we can think of journalism and there are some really technical skills for sure that you need. But I love that just remaining calm and knowing how to talk to folks and like build rapport with folks are actually kind of like the table stakes. That's what you've got to be able to do regardless of like what you're going to pursue.
Yeah.
That's sort of neat. When I think about um, yeah, just how much experience you gained as a reporter for the Daily Tar Heel, and then also now as the editor. I know you specifically, but also the newspaper have received a lot of recent national coverage from some pretty crazy newspaper. I mean, just like really amazing art online features, and then I think the New York Times too, right? Featured some
I don't
student journalism or something. But um, so I just wanted to ask. I know you guys have handled some really tough situations this year, the shooting on campus being one of them. So I just wondered if you wanted to share a little bit about what that was like handling that kind of, I don't know, pressure or just that kind of situation as a college student, as a junior in college, right? Just what would you share about just that experience?
Yeah. It it was very hard. It's an experience you don't really expect to have in college. Unfortunately, a lot of students have experienced a shooting, and I'm sure more will in the future. And so I will say, like going into this role, when I became the editor-in-chief at the Daily Tar Heel, I had thought about what I would do if there was a shooting on campus. I had thought about how I would cover it and how I would make sure my staff was okay as well. But when it happens, it feels a little bit different. It's a little scarier. I mean, it's a lot scarier, and it's something that you can't really imagine, even if you do try to. Um, so there was a shooting on UNC's campus on August 28th. So that was our second week of school, our second week of classes. And it was the second week that the whole editor team was on the job. At the Daily Tar Heel, we work for the academic year. So we really start in August and we end in May. And so 37 editors fresh on the job were figuring out how to cover it, what to do. And like that's not even counting the reporters and the staff members that we have at the Daily Tar Heel. And so I will say, when the shooting occurred, most people were on campus. I was on campus. We were locked down immediately. I remember starting to report on what happened and just trying to figure out like who we can trust, what are the police saying, and kind of reporting through that, keeping our community aware of what was actually happening, because there was a lot of rumors going around on social media, people not sure if people were okay. There was rumors of hostages or multiple shooters. It's all very confusing, and it's not good if people don't know who they can trust. So I think that was the most important work that we could have been doing at the Daily Tar Heel, is making sure people are aware of the truth and trying to figure out that truth ourselves. And then once the lockdown was over, so it lasted for 3 hours from around 1 to around 4, went to the newsroom. The Daily Tar Heel newsroom is located off of Franklin Street, which is the main street in Chapel Hill. And I worked with other editors when we tried to figure out what to do, how to cover it, what our paper would look like. And then when we printed that paper, I believe it was within 24 hours, it gained a lot of attention. My print managing editor, Caitlin Yeady's tweet of the front page immediately started gaining traction on Twitter. And I think now it has over 8 million views or likes, I think. And so we started receiving media requests the next day from MSNBC, CNN, NBC, NPR. It was very overwhelming. And I will say, like, on a personal note, it was hard to go through an event like that and then push through to get a paper out. And then the next day think you have a break and you don't, because there's so many media requests in your inbox. It was a hard week. I had COVID as well. I remember being really tired and still trying to process everything, but also, I mean, I had a newsroom to run. I had to make sure people were okay. So I did, and I think my team did really well, and pushed through a really traumatic event for students, especially because we're a student newspaper. So our journalists aren't just journalists. They're also students who were hiding in closets, hiding in bathrooms, barricading doors. And so ever since then, we've been trying to kind of recover and make sure we're prioritizing our mental health, making sure that people are okay. Because after something like that, like, it's really hard to be okay and to keep going. So it's kind of a long tangent I just went on, but it was definitely a moment, definitely a hard thing to go through.
Yeah. I'm just reflecting on so much of what you just said, and I'm just so I don't I mean, the word is impressed by how you all handled it and how you can talk about it today. Because I think, yeah, this is something that's like in our national conscious, right? We think about this a lot, unfortunately. And I just, yeah, I just really appreciate you sharing all of that detail and just the level of care that you took in both the what are we actually reporting on and how do we make sure that we're a trusted source of information for people, and then also how do I care about my team, right? My friends, everybody in the community. So thanks for
Thank you.
that. Mhm. Yeah. I'm curious if there's on a just like other sort of lighter note about just like college in general. I mean, is there sort of some advice that you would want to give to like high school students? Like
Yeah.
choosing activities, like just any pieces of that, just like general college life. I know students are really thinking finally differently about it because we are sort of out of COVID and this stage of the pandemic, right? But I know a lot of those anxieties I think still exist for high school students. So yeah, what advice would you give about making students or making friends, choosing activities that resonate with you in college?
Yeah. I remember being really nervous to go to college. I remember my first few weeks on campus, not knowing where the campus buildings were, really not understanding how to get places or like going the wrong way. But I will say, like, you figure it out. Now, walking around campus, like, I know where everything is. You know all the shortcuts. It's really fun, and your campus really becomes your home, which I really enjoy, especially if you can live on campus. If you go to a four-year college, which I will say there are a lot of different options. Like I I won't sit here and pretend like a four-year college is the only path you could take. And it's not for everyone. I'm at UNC and I really enjoy it. I would say when you come to UNC, or sorry, when you go to college, only pick the activities that you're actually interested in. I remember in high school, I feel like I did everything. I'm sure many people feel this way where they're like in five different clubs, they're maybe playing a sport, they're taking a ton of AP classes or IB classes, whatever your school does. But when you go to college, you get to really choose what you want to study, and you also get to choose what activities you want to really pour into. And that was something I really enjoyed. So I decided to do marching band my first year, um, which was fun. It ended up just not being something I wanted to continue. I also joined the Daily Tar Heel my first semester at UNC, and that turned out to more be my thing. Um, so I would also say like try different things if you want. Like if one thing is not working, you don't feel the need to stick with it. Like try something else and you'll find your community. I will say like I found a big part of my community at the Daily Tar Heel. I spend so much time here. I spend so much time with people I really love. Um, and that's been great. But it really happens naturally. Don't stress it too much. Like you will find your people. It might take some time, but it'll happen. It's not something like you should be losing sleep over. College is really fun and it's a really great experience.
I know it's crazy to think it's already November. I can't believe I'm almost a second semester senior. It's crazy. Um, with um, with the application process, I know that the deadline has already come for early action and early decision and all that craziness. But what advice would you have for students who are still going through the application process?
Wow, I feel like I applied so long ago. This is so weird. I would say just show who you are in your essays. I think the biggest part of like the biggest thing people are looking at when they read your application is those essays and figuring out like who you are and why you should be on their campus. Um, so like don't try to be someone you're not. Don't use big words you don't know what they like the meaning of. Um, I mean, I think just being who you are is the most important thing. and showing a true reflection of what you do best, the things you love the most, and like your background and your experiences. That's really the heart of your application.
It can be so stressful. I know that process just of like, where did people get in? I just remember, I mean, it's been even longer since I went through that process, but I'm just remembering like the big decision days when they would come out, and it just is such a high pressured time, I think.
Yeah, it really is. My heart goes out to all of the seniors. I know it's really stressful. Liza, I hope it's all okay. I'm sure you will get in somewhere amazing. Do you know where you're going?
Not yet. I've applied to a couple schools, but we'll see. I have hopes, but we'll see.
Yeah, good.
Send you love and luck. It'll
Well, as we think about just other advice that you have and that you think about, I am curious if there are sort of really valuable lessons that you have picked up over the past couple of years, whether it was from youth and government or just your time in college, that have remained with you, that are things that are guiding the decisions that you continue to make as you look forward.
That's a good question. I think when I was in high school, and even now, honestly, a lot of um, my self-worth came from academic success or just success in general. And I'm sure, like, when I was at YAG, I was surrounded by high achievers. I'm sure it's the same now. But something I try to remind myself, especially in college, and so if you're a senior, like going to college, try to remember that everyone is running their own race. What you consider to be like success or like the the goal of your life is not necessarily the goal of someone else's. And so I might be chasing like some specific thing and another person is chasing something fully different. And I try to remind myself that when I feel like I'm failing and I'm doing the worst and I'm just like never going to be successful because everyone is like gonna do well based on their own measures of success. And so keeping that in mind is really important because no one has the same life, no one has the same experiences. And quite honestly, no one has the exact same goals. So don't like pretend that you're competing with everyone who's in your year when you go to college or that you're competing with everyone in your high school because you're not. You're all just at the same point of your life and you're all going to do well and it'll all be okay. And I try to remind myself that even now.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think one of the things too that I think a lot about is you mentioned these like goalposts, and me, I mean, much older now, out of the sort of high school and, college, like where you can tell where every single person is sort of putting down these flags in the sand, but one of the things that happens a lot is sometimes you don't get one of those things that you were chasing, right? That goalpost isn't met or isn't met on the timeline that you thought you were going to meet it at. So we're asking everyone on the podcast about this idea of failure broadly. I think it's a topic that we don't talk about enough as a society, and definitely not with these high achieving kind of students either. So I'm curious if you have an experience of failure that you'd be willing to share. Mostly just the lessons that you learned from it, if there are any. But just as you think about that concept of like something that didn't go your way or something didn't work out the way you thought it was going to, how did you deal with that? How did you recover from that situation?
That's a great question. I will say this is kind of in line with college applications. I remember applying to colleges and being rejected from colleges, and I think that still happens today. So last year, I applied to a ton of internships. And the year before, my freshman year, I applied to a ton of internships, like probably like 50, honestly. Um, and my first year, I didn't get anything. And I'll say that's pretty normal. Like a lot of people, especially who are interested in journalism, don't get an internship after their first year. But I will say that was a really good thing for me because I got to stay in Chapel Hill and I worked at the Daily Tar Heel and I got even more experience. And I think that led to where I am now. And the things I learned that summer, I still use today. And like in general, the whole struggle of applying for jobs, applying for internships, it's hard. You get so many rejections or you don't get any messages at all. And it hurts. I mean, it's never going to get easier. I don't think it will ever get easier. But I try to remind myself that the right people will find you and the right opportunity will find you. And just because the one thing that you want to do maybe this summer or the one dream job that you have, if you don't get it, it's just not meant to be. Maybe you'll get it in the future, but there's a better plan for the time that you might be doing that internship or that you might be working in that job. And so I'm currently in the process of applying for jobs and internships. So I'm reminding myself that again, people around me. It's tough. Being a college kid is hard. It's a lot of just hoping that it works out for your internships. And maybe I'm saying that because I'm surrounded by other journalists and the world of journalism is kind of hard right now. I'm sure people in the business school are totally fine. But yeah, that's kind of one like quote unquote failure that I still think was a really good experience for me. And some of the times we think of something as a failure, it's actually not a failure at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. There's so much value in what you shared that there's, doors are closing, but there are other ones that you may not even know sort of exist yet. And you couldn't possibly, right? Because that's not that's not how these things unfold. So that's some really good advice there. Maybe. Okay, so for our last round of questions, and something hopefully kind of fun, we're doing almost like a lightning round of a certain number of questions that we are really special because our officer team actually generated these questions. So although we are just interviewing with one student, a lot of students have had a voice into the YAGCAST, which I'm sure as the founder of this program, you'll be excited to know. So I'm going to let Liza ask these questions, but know that they're ones that every single person who comes on the YAGCAST is answering. So we're excited about having that sort of capstone in the interview process. So Liza, take it away.
So my first question is this or that Friday fun night or governor's gala?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to say Governor's Gala. I love a fancy dress. I love all the fancy food. It's just a vibe.
Um, what is your favorite or most impactful book that you've ever read?
Ooh. Okay, this is hard. I I really enjoy The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. So good. I love historical fiction and it's really impactful.
Cool. I'm a reader. I'll have to add that on my
Yeah,
TBR.
I would suggest. It's awesome.
And then what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
If I didn't do journalism, I would be interested in diving into web development and like website design. That sounds really interesting to me.
Cool. That's awesome.
Super
Thank
fun.
you.
Emmy, this has been such a treat. It has been so good to reconnect with you, to learn about what you're doing today, and to just hear about what it's really like to actually practice journalism as a student, but also in real life, right? Like you are producing really high quality reporting, and I'm just so grateful that we were able to get you back on the YAGCAST. So thank you for this time and for your wisdom that you've shared.
Of course.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. Sorry.
Thank you.
It's been great. You guys are really good interviewers. Thank you.